Hey guys, welcome back. In the previous video, we saw how we can create a trigger to run our test on a schedule. We already have seen how we can run our test on a merge to main and on a pull request. And in this video, let's see, a use case where let's say we want to run our test on different test environments, maybe on a develop environment or on a staging environment. How can we do that? Typically, when we want to run our test on a pull request for our own test, we're just trying to see that we've not broken our test, and running it on a default test environment works well for us, right? The same goes for the case for main, the same goes for the case of schedule. And typically this is more of a stable environment, so not develop, but typically this is a staging environment that we want to run our test on. But what if we want to run our test, let's say, on the develop environment and not just on staging? And what if we want to run different set of test cases? Like in this particular case, what has happened is we excluded flaky and failing test cases, and then we were running smoke test cases, and we were running we're running smoke test cases here, we're running all non-flaky test cases here. But what if we want to only run flaky test cases? What if you only want to run failing test cases? It's good to have an option to run our test manually as well. So in this video, we're going to do just that. So let's go back to Google. In events, like if you remember, we searched for GitHub schedule. Yeah, this is a different one. But let's say if you want to test on GitHub events, and then if we click on this, no, this is a different one. Let's just say GitHub events to trigger tests, to trigger workflows, events that trigger workflows. And what we're looking at is something called a workflow dispatch event, right? So let's go back. Let's make first a copy of this. So let's make a copy of this trigger, refactor, copy file, trigger test manually, right? And as you can see, like, since all of our common code is inside this reusable template, now it's like calling a function. That's all we're doing here, calling a function with different parameters, right? So maybe instead of this, let's copy stuff from schedule. I think that's more interesting. Trigger test manually, because it also has got some comments. And what we need to do is run tests. First, rename them manually. Run tests manually, and let's go back, change the trigger to workflow dispatch, Windows 1, let's call it workflow dispatch, Windows 2. Let's see an example. So in this case, since we want to run our test cases manually, we can specify certain inputs. So let's copy the whole thing, Control C, Windows 1, and let's place it here. Now the question is, what should be our inputs? And there are two things that we want to change here, right? Like, first is we want to be able to give, we should be able to give inputs, like choose inputs manually from a UI for test to include, test to exclude, but we also want to pass on test environment. So in fact, we can also provide a maybe make a copy of this, tab, let's call it test environment, right? It's not required, at least it's not required for the other workflows, so we can keep it false, and we can give the default value as the one that we provided here, right? So let's go back and let's give default value as staging. The name of the environment is test environment, so let's also come here and let's add the test environment as D test environment equals, let's put this in quotes this time. Let's copy the temp like example, and let's just put it as test environment, right? That's what we are going to pass here. So with this, we have fixed our template to also now include the test environment. What else? Let's go back. And so now we want to pass three things like test environment. In this case, this is what we want to pass manually. So let's copy the names. You can give different names, but we can even use the same names. I think that makes more sense. So description, tag of test to include. Is it required? Let's keep it false for now because we can provide some default values. And the default value actually could be all the test cases, right? And we can give it choice. And the options could be maybe smoke, flaky, and failing, right? And in fact, we can do the same for all the three. So let's remove this, make a copy of this, and tags of test to exclude, and let's call it exclude. Required is false, and you can exclude maybe failing test cases like as a default value, and the options could be smoke, flaky, and failing, right? In fact, I also want to provide an option to choose all. So let's also give this as an option. I also want to put this option here, which means exclude nothing, right? You know the meanings. If I give here, let's say run all tests, and basically this means exclude nothing, right? So these are like all the four options that you got: smoke, flaky, failing, okay? And then we can also provide an environment choice, and let's remove this, tag, tag, tag. Let's call it what's called here test environment, and let's go back, and this is test environment, right? Not required. Default could be staging, and the values could be develop and staging. So default could be staging. Options, we cannot exclude this, so we don't have this option, and it could be develop and it could be staging. So this could be develop and staging. Control C, Control V, right? If all goes well, I think these are all the inputs that we need. Run all tests, exclude no tests, and then we need to basically take this as an input. How do we do that? Let's go back. It says if you want to use it, like just use them as, like the same thing, like variables. So if I go back, you can actually provide inputs dot tag of test to include. Let's copy this, Okay, test exclude, and Control D. Let's get the third variable, test environment, Control C, right? And I'm keeping the name same. You can keep it different, but I think why confuse? Let's remove the comments here. Maybe I can just put it here. Control X. Okay. I think this looks good to me. And with this, let's just go ahead and create a pull request. Windows 3. Run test template. We added an environment. Default is staging. We added this trigger to test manually, and we updated our reference variable to staging environment, right, from develop to staging, because typically that's what you would want. So added trigger to run test manually. Oh, we're on the main branch. Save runtime. So git checkout. Am I gonna git pull first? Maybe git stash. Git pull. Already up to date. So let's do a branch. Git checkout branch. Add manual trigger. Git stash pop. Okay. And now let's go back. Trigger test manually. Okay. Commit. Run test template. Okay. And change this to staging. Okay. Dated template. And now let's publish the branch. Okay, Windows 2. Let's go back to GitHub actions. Oh, run test on a schedule. By the way, so the run test on a schedule did trigger, which is about every 15 minutes, right? This is what we covered in the previous video. And it failed, which is fine. Let's see why it failed. Test with Maven. The excluded groups, nothing. Include nothing. Okay, so there were actually decent failures, which is exactly what we wanted, right? If you remember, on a schedule, if I go to the workflow file, we said we want to run all our test cases, right? Exclude nothing, include everything. And since if you remember, there was one failing test case and there was a flaky test case, and since we did not exclude this, that's the reason we have a build failure. But out of 13 test cases, 2 were failed and 11 were passed. So this actually worked well. So there's nothing to fix, right? This is exactly what we wanted. For our monthly reports, we wanted to show how many are still failing and how many are passing. So this is good test. That schedule is working fine. If I go back to pull request, let's create a pull request now for manual trigger. Create pull request, fast change 3. Okay, we are a test environment. Okay, this is the manually YAML staging, right? So everything looks good here. We cannot run this. How do we say? Maybe let's try. I think we have to first be on the main branch, but let's try. If I go to actions, add manual trigger. So this was the workflow. How do I say? Yeah, this is the pull request workflow. So we first have to merge this, and only then we will be able to run manually our triggers. So let's just go ahead and merge this pull request. Squash and merge, confirm squash and merge. And now if I go to actions, add manual trigger, run test and merge to main. Where is the manually trigger, right? So this is the manual trigger. And now you can see we have a run workflow option, which was not available before. And now you can choose on which branch you want to run your test cases. So tags of test to include, these are all the options. You can include, if you give nothing, it means everything, right? So uh, let's include everything, right? And test to exclude, uh, so in this case we can only exclude flaky or failing. Maybe I should also give an option to exclude both, but for now let's exclude failing test cases, right? And let's run our test not on staging but on develop environment. So or maybe just run smoke test, but if I include smoke, then that's the only one it runs, then it doesn't care about other test cases. So let's keep it all. Run workflow, and let's see, run test manually run by Pramod, and now the workflow is triggered. Okay, and what do we have here? It included all the test cases, and then it said exclude failing test cases. So we should have run 12 test cases, right? Let's go back here. So we have run 12 test cases, and the flaky one has failed, right? So this is good test. The flaky one test case failed, which is fine. So even this one is working fine, right? The only thing that I need to do is make this minor change. Let me go to get checkout branch, or maybe let's just first check out main, get pull, get branch, and get checkout branch. Add multiple options, and in fact I can also clean up this schedule trigger, which will run it every 15 minutes, because we already have seen that the schedule trigger works. So run test on a schedule worked, run all the test cases like we expected, run all 13 test cases including flaky and failing test cases. So it did work, right? 13 test cases including flaky and failures. So I can also remove this trigger. So now this cron job will run every Monday and every first of the month. And let's see, on manually, let's also add a option to run both, like exclude both flaky and failing test cases, right? And guys, like you can see, there's no problem even if I uh, you know add a space here, because in the template I've already fixed to add extra quotes between this for these variables. So this should work fine. So let's open VS Code. Yeah, added an option to exclude both this, or why not also provide this option here. What if I want to run only failing and flaky test cases? I can. And trigger test, remove the trigger. So all good. And you're saying Add an option to remove, add an option to run both flaky and failing test cases. Okay. Also removed cron trigger to run tests every 15 minutes. Cool. Let's publish the branch. Create a pull request. Let's go here. Pull request. Create a pull request. Yep. And now these are the two changes. We either want to include flaky failing test cases, right, or run tests on a schedule. So now let's just merge this. Enable auto merge. Okay, cool, merged. And now if I go to actions, if I go to run test manually, I do have an option to run workflow, but I can say, hey, only run flaky and failing test case. So run these two test cases and exclude, let's say, small test cases, or exclude nothing. Exclude nothing, right? But include flaky failing means it will not run any of the test cases. So if I run workflow, it will only run two test cases. So let's see. By the way, an interesting test to do would be to, let's say include flaky and failing, and also to say exclude flaky and failing. I want to see like what happens if you do that. But apart from that, I think we are all set to basically come to an end to our video. So test with Maven should have run two test cases. It did run two test cases. One was failed. So the flaky failures was 1. Oh, the test run was 1. Create a flaky test case. Interesting. Yeah, because okay, so what happened was, this is a good test. When I gave exclude failing and include failing, I think yeah, the include one was then cancelled out, and then it only included the flaky test case and it excluded the failing test case, right? So now I also know that if I give both include failing and exclude failing, nothing will run. So that's a good test. We don't have to do that anymore. So I think with this, we have come to an end to this video. With this, we learn, apart from creating triggers on pull request, on merge to main, apart from creating triggers on a schedule, we also learn how to trigger tests manually. In the next video, we're going to do something more interesting, and that is triggering tests in our repository based on another event that is happening, let's say in a microservice. So let's say every time a pull request is getting merged on develop branch, if you want to run our test on develop environment, we can do that. If you want to run, if let's say something gets merged in the staging branch there, and we want to run our test on staging branch, we will see how to achieve that. So I hope you learned something useful again in this video with manual triggers, and in the next video we will learn about how to trigger our test based on an external event that is happening in another repository. So thank you. See you guys in another video. Cheers. Bye-bye.